Can we talk about mentoring for a little bit? Is that okay?
Yeah,
So
sure.
you were a mentor on the BT Ethnically Diverse Mentorship Program. Why do you feel that mentorship as a whole is important?
Yeah, and I think it's been a real journey for me because one of the biggest mistakes I made, as a young entrepreneur, because I was given advice to go and find mentors. And I was a bit, as I said, I was a terrible employee, but I was a little bit of a, I was a bit of an arrogant young man, really. That was, and I guess some young entrepreneurs are, and actually you have to be a bit arrogant and a bit crazy to be able to, when you've got no savings, you've got a mortgage, etc. I mean, to just quit your job, with nothing behind you to try and set up a business. So you got to be a bit, a bit arrogant. But I was very arrogant, and I was given a lot of advice around, look, go and find some mentors, etc. And I just didn't feel like I needed mentors. I just
Hmm.
felt like, well, I mean, I'm quite capable. I'm a smart person. Like I said, I taught myself programming. I taught myself how to kind of set up and run a business. Like, why do I need anybody else's help? And this was when I was 25, 26. And actually, 10 years later, I actually realized that, and actually having been practically on that journey and really kind of learning through the school of hard knocks and all the mistakes I've made, and reflected back on all the times when actually a mentor could have really helped me sense check and and talk through that. um over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been seeking mentorship from everybody, from peers, from
Hmm.
colleagues, etc. um and that's really kind of evolved into real appreciation for mentorship. And so part of it is almost like trying to give back the thing I
Yeah.
didn't take, because obviously when I was young, I was quite arrogant, etc. So over the last decade or so, I've learned practically how important mentorship will be. To anybody who's trying to get into the space and understand what they're trying to do. So my first hand experiences really mattered to me. But the second thing that mattered to me was, over the last 5 years, as I then started dealing with mentors, you could really see the difference some of these people can make in your
Hmm.
life. Uh, I remember, I think, particularly in the pandemic, uh, you know, I went through, we had a really difficult year in the pandemic, and I went through a really, really dark place. And, we talk about loving your job, and, I wasn't sure I loved my job at that time. It was a
Hmm.
really dark place. I felt quite isolated. I felt, I mean, I guess most people did in the pandemic. I guess we're all stuck in our houses, but more than ever, because I'm not outgoing, but you can see I'm quite like, I've got energy. I'm quite an energetic person. And I just felt all of that sap through in the pandemic. And if not for one of the mentors I was working with, who really got me to kind of fall back in love with what I was doing, have perspective, etc. And that really changed. And actually, I've only been on my mentoring journey for the last year and a half. And I just really saw the power, because you almost like I went to that brink of, I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm just going to quit, to actually, really enjoying what I'm doing, driving the business, all these 20 different ideas, etc. Now, obviously, some of this was coaching, and I know there's a little bit of a blurred line between
Yeah.
mentoring and coaching. And I saw the real power of that in the pandemic, in that, and I'm not talking about, this person wasn't like a, psychotherapist or anything like that. I'm not talking about therapy, but really just the mentoring side combined with everything else, all the support I've got. And I think, I just saw the power of that, and I felt like that's something I can give back to somebody who's in that same position, somebody who's starting and doesn't know how to do sales and marketing in the agency sector,
Okay.
somebody who's, trying to do a tech startup but doesn't really know how to do fundraising. These are things I've been through, and, can provide a template for. So yeah, giving back was really important. And obviously giving back on, really important programs like the Ethically Diverse Leadership Program, means so much more
Hmm.
than just doing it with somebody I know or something like that.
No, I think it's cool because I must say, if I'm 100% honest, I don't have what I do have mentors, but I get my mentorship from books and from literature and from people, because my big thing is that I love people that have been there and done it. So you, because you've
Mhm.
lived the life, you've done 20 years, Hedgehog Lab is 15 years old now. But I really respect anyone that's been there, got the scars, and they've been through it. You do
Mhm.
also have people online that sell coaching, but they've done a course, but they haven't lived it. And for me, I class it as my bullshit meter, but it's almost where, for me, I know who I gravitate towards. But actually, because the ambitions that I have, there aren't many people in England that have done that level of stuff. So I try and just take inspiration. But I do genuinely want to just learn and get ideas from everywhere. And when we mentioned before about how being criticized, there's a guy called Ray Dalio that is one of the world's richest men. But they have something called radical transparency,
Yeah.
where they encourage the criticism. And actually, one of my clients now, there's something that someone's doing that I'm not sure about. I should have been on the phone today to do that, if that makes sense. But the point is, the end goal, if you're as a leader, you genuinely want to get to the end or the target or your big, hairy, audacious goal, challenge is okay, because actually, what if they're right? And it will help you get there. And it's funny that, yeah, one of my clients says to me that, Steve, I pay you for your advice, even if I don't want to hear it. And I think it's so true. But in many ways, I still fall into that character that you described, where I actually want the mentorship. I'm just very selective about who it is,
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And I think there's nothing wrong in being selective. And I totally
Mm.
agree. I think, there are a lot of career coaches and mentors who've done a course on something and suddenly,
Mm.
think that they can do it all. And I certainly think I agree. And I think both of the, I have this idea of a personal advisory board that
Hmm.
I'm just refreshing right now. And I don't necessarily mind the diversity of it. I've got a friend on it right now who isn't essentially more experienced than me, but she brings a very different perspective
Yeah.
to how I handle my work than say somebody who's been in that same boat, etc. But ultimately, it's got to be people you respect for their diverse opinions rather than people because they're qualified, which I think is a very different dynamic.
No, cool.